My parents invited me to a family gathering, just to inform me that they had left everything to my siblings in their will. So I stopped paying their bills. But 2 weeks later, my mother reminded me that the mortgage payment was coming due. For the past 4 years, I've worked as a senior project manager at a construction company. Unlike many of my colleagues, who often complain about the demanding hours and difficult clients, I thrive under pressure. There's something incredibly satisfying about overseeing a project. From conception to completion. From blueprints to grand opening. The apartment I live in isn't huge, but it's mine. Or at least it will be once I finish paying off the mortgage. The view from the balcony overlooks the river. And on clear days, you can see the mountains in the distance. That Friday evening, I was enjoying a rare moment of calm with a glass of wine, when my phone buzzed. My mother's name appeared on the screen. "Hi Mom," I said, holding the phone between my shoulder and ear, as I poured myself another glass. "Sweetheart." Her voice had that overly cheerful tone that usually meant she wanted something. "Your father and I are organizing a family gathering next Saturday. Everyone will be there, and we need you to come. I'm also making your favorite lasagna. The 3-cheese one with homemade sauce." Her lasagna was famous in the family. And she knew it was my weakness. I couldn't help but smile. "I'll be there." After hanging up, I went back to the balcony. It had been months since I last saw them. Between my 60-hour work weeks and their packed retirement schedule, full of golf and community theater, our lives rarely aligned. Except on major holidays. Seeing my younger siblings would be interesting. With a 12-year age gap between us, I was already working and paying for college, while they were still in elementary school, getting all the attention and latest gadgets. Our parents' approach to parenting had changed drastically. With me, it was all about responsibility, saving money, and learning to be independent. By age 12, I was doing my own laundry. By 14, I had become the official babysitter. Anytime they needed to go out at night. Meanwhile, the younger ones grew up with far fewer rules and far more pampering. When I moved out at 18, they were still being tucked in at night. Now at 24, both of them live in apartments that our parents help pay for, while they figure things out. One switched majors 3 times before settling on communications, and the other is unemployed after quitting a job because his boss was totally toxic. The following Saturday, I arrived at the house's front door precisely at 4:30 p.m. My siblings' cars were already parked outside. Great. I was the last to arrive, which probably meant they'd already been talking about me. As I approached the door, I heard laughter from inside. It stopped abruptly when I rang the bell. My mother opened the door, wearing an apron and a strained smile. Come in, come in." She gave me a quick hug, and I caught the scent of garlic mixed with her perfume. They were both sitting together on the sofa, leaning toward each other with conspiratorial energy. When I entered, they both looked up at the same time, with expressions of forced indifference. "Hi," said one, twirling a strand of hair around her finger. "Nice outfit. Coming from work?" It was Saturday, but I didn't bother correcting her. "Hi." I nodded toward the other, who greeted me with a slight nod of the head. I walked into the dining room, where my mother was setting the fancy dishes. The ones we only used on Thanksgiving and Christmas. Breaking out the good stuff, I commented. "This must be serious." My parents exchanged a quick glance that made me uneasy. Before I could ask what was going on, the others entered and took their usual seats across from me. During dinner, the conversation stayed surface level. My mother talked about her gardening club. My father mentioned a new golf course he was considering. And the younger ones gossiped about people I didn't know from their social circle. No one asked about my job or personal life. Which wasn't unusual. But still bothered me. The lasagna was delicious. As always. But I couldn't fully enjoy it with the tension in the air. My mother's hands trembled slightly as she served dessert, homemade tiramisu. Another one of my favorites. "All right," I said finally, putting down my fork. "What's going on? Everyone's acting weird. And Mom made two of my favorite dishes. Just tell me what this is about." My parents exchanged another uncomfortable glance before my father cleared his throat. "We're getting older. And we've been thinking about the future," he began. My mother added, "We finalized our will. And we wanted to talk to you in person." "Okay," I said cautiously. "We've decided," my father continued, "that the house and the lake cabin will go to your siblings." Silence filled the room. I looked at my father, waiting for more of an explanation. But he just watched me, as if waiting for my reaction. "Just to confirm," I finally asked. "That's it?" My mother took a defensive tone. "You have to understand, sweetheart. You're doing very well financially. And they're still trying to find stability. They need more security than you do." I looked at the others. Both were trying, unsuccessfully, to hide their smug smiles. "Just to be clear," one of them said, leaning forward. "We wanted you to hear it directly so there's no confusion later. Everything's ours." I sat there in silence, looking at each of them. My father, waiting for me to accept this without question. My mother, uneasy, trying to justify the unjustifiable. And the two across the table, satisfied, barely hiding their triumphant smirks. My head pounded. "Let me see if I understand," I said, crossing my arms. "The house and the lake cabin go to them. You decided I don't need anything because, according to you, I'm doing fine financially." My mother opened her mouth to respond. But I raised my hand to stop her. "No, wait, I just want to understand the logic. They get everything, because they're failures?" Their smiles vanished instantly. "That's not fair," one of them muttered. "It's not our fault you're a workaholic obsessed with money." The audacity. Obsessed with money? I laughed bitterly. "Do you know what it means to pay bills? To work for a salary that keeps a roof over your head? Because I left home at 18 with nothing. I didn't have the comfort you two have had since then. I made it on my own. No one ever paid my expenses. No one ever covered for my mistakes. And what does that have to do with anything?" The other interrupted. "You always wanted that life." "Wanted," I repeated, feeling my blood boil. "Oh, of course. So I wanted to work from a young age. While you two were off finding yourselves? I wanted to be an adult. While you were still being handed everything? You have to understand, sweetheart." My mother tried again. "They still need stability." I let out a sarcastic laugh. "Stability? They've never done anything in their lives." The room fell into absolute silence. "I left home with nothing. While you gave them everything." "I worked as a babysitter, a waitress, an intern. Anything that helped me pay my bills. I studied and worked at the same time. Everything I have, I built through effort. And now you tell me they need stability? What have they done up to now to deserve it?" Both of them looked at me like I was the villain in the story. "You've always been very independent." My mother murmured. "You never needed us." My patience was at its limit. "And you encouraged that. While I learned to be responsible. They learned." "What? To ask for money? To complain about their boss? To change majors 3 times? To believe they're too special to work at a coffee shop?" I already said that place was toxic. The younger one protested, offended. Of course, because it's easier to blame everyone else than admit you simply can't handle a schedule. They glanced at each other, and my father cleared his throat. There's nothing more to discuss. The decision has been made. I looked him straight in the eye. You need a will? You're still alive. That means you're going to keep paying their bills. Until when? My mother avoided my gaze. My father held a firm expression. They'll need support until they're stable. You're overreacting. The other one complained, rolling his eyes. I felt my blood boil even more. Overreacting? Let's go over this again. You spent my whole life teaching me that I had to work hard to get anything. You threw me into the world while still handing everything to them. And now that you're dividing your assets, I get nothing. Because I tried too hard to succeed? No one responded. You know what? Fine. You have every right to decide who gets what. But know this. From now on, I'll also be making my own decisions. What does that mean? My mother asked cautiously. It means that if you think I don't need anything from you, then you don't need anything from me either. The confusion was immediate. What are you talking about? One of them asked, frowning. The bills. The help I've been giving you. The money that comes out of my pocket. To keep this house running. My mother's eyes widened in shock. No, you can't be serious. Very serious. If I'm independent enough not to need an inheritance, then you're adult enough to cover your own expenses. My father turned red. That's blackmail. No. That's reciprocity. My heart was pounding. I had never felt so furious. So betrayed. So resolute. I never asked you for anything. I never needed you. But the least I expected was respect. The two younger ones started shifting in their seats uncomfortably. Wait, so that means... Daughter. I smiled without humor. It means that from now on, everyone pays their own bills. My mother was speechless. I didn't spend my life being told. I had to learn to manage on my own. Just so you could all be carried forever. Now it's your turn. They were left open-mouthed. The dinner that had started with smug smiles and confidence ended in full-blown panic. I stood up. It's been a pleasure attending this family gathering. Next time, don't bother calling me. I grabbed my purse and walked out, feeling the weight of years of injustice finally lift off my shoulders. Now they can learn to pay their own bills. Weeks passed since that night, and the silence between us had become something thick, almost tangible. To be honest, I didn't mind it at all. Since that disastrous dinner, I hadn't lifted a single finger to help them. No bank transfers. No bills paid. Not even a word exchanged. At first, they seemed determined to prove they didn't need me. My father kept his proud posture. My mother pretended everything was still normal. And my siblings? Well, they kept living as if money still fell from the sky. Until, as expected, reality hit them square in the face. The mortgage payment was due. But this time I wasn't there to cover it. Without the extra money I used to send every month, the numbers simply didn't add up. My parents' savings were already stretched thin, because they were still supporting two adults who refused to act like adults. And my siblings, of course, didn't have a single cent saved. Panic set in. The first call from my mother came in with a tone that was far too calm to be genuine. She started with small talk, trying to sound casual, until, with forced lightness, she finally said what she really wanted to say. Well, the mortgage is due in a few days. And we were thinking maybe you could help us. Just this month. I listened in silence, feeling a strange mix of satisfaction and deep anger. No. Her reaction was immediate. I heard her choke up on the other end. Sweetheart, no. You made a decision. Now take responsibility for it. She tried to argue. But I didn't let her continue. After that, the messages came. First came the pleas. Then the guilt trips. And finally, shameless accusations. My siblings, of course, joined the campaign, demanding that I stop being selfish and think of the family. But I was calm. I knew the desperation would only grow. And it did. Days later, they asked me to come to my parents' house for a talk. When I arrived, the tension was unbearable. My father was slumped in his chair, his face stern. My mother stood in the kitchen, busy with anything she could find, just to avoid looking me in the eye. My siblings were on the couch, restless, angry, frustrated. So, what's the emergency? I asked, crossing my arms. My mother was the first to speak. Her tone artificially sweet. Sweetheart, the situation is difficult. The mortgage is due tomorrow. And we just haven't been able to gather the money. Oh, how curious, I interrupted sarcastically. Not long ago I was the workaholic. Obsessed with money. Now I'm suddenly the solution to all your problems? She sighed. I didn't mean it like that. Then why am I here? My father finally stepped in. The bank will take the house if we don't pay. We're trying to figure out a solution today. But we need time. If you help us this time, we promise we'll find a way to fix things soon. I looked at them. Bitterness rising in my throat. Even after everything, they still expected me to swoop in and save them. No questions asked. Fine. I'll help you. But on one condition. All four looked at me, alert. I want the properties transferred to my name in the will. I'm not asking for anything now. I just want to make sure that when the time comes, I'll be the one to divide everything fairly. Chaos broke out instantly. What? My brother shouted, outraged. That's a trap, my sister exclaimed, furious. No. That's justice, I replied calmly. They started to protest. But I raised my hand, signaling silence. Before we continue this useless debate, tell me, can you pay the mortgage? Silence. Then you have two options, I continued. Either accept my proposal and guarantee that we all get a fair share in the future, or lose the house now. My mother shook her head in disbelief. Sweetheart, you don't need this. You're a successful, independent woman. Your siblings are still trying to find themselves. I let out a dry laugh. Trying to find themselves, Mom? They're in their 20s. Since when does finding yourself mean doing absolutely nothing? While you keep supporting them? She wanted to reply, but hesitated. I know they've been irresponsible, she finally admitted. But they're still my children. And what am I? A stranger? I was always treated as the responsible adult. I was always told I had to fend for myself. And now that I actually did, you expect me to keep carrying everything? Family, my father let out a heavy sigh, defeated. You'd really divide everything fairly in the future? Yes. I'm not asking for all of it now. I just want to make sure they can't do again what they've already done. Take everything and leave me out. He closed his eyes for a moment. I could see him struggling with his pride. All right. We'll do it. My siblings began yelling at once. But my father silenced them with a single look. There's no other option. They were furious. I could see the rage in their faces. They knew this meant that one day they'd have to share the inheritance with me. But that was no longer my problem. The days that followed were filled with tense silences. The will was modified. In the presence of a lawyer. to ensure everything was legally registered. I transferred the money needed for the mortgage. At the last minute, preventing them from losing the house. My siblings didn't speak to me again. My mother tried to pretend everything was normal, while my father remained distant, quieter than ever. And me? I moved on with my life, for the first time knowing that I had secured what was fair. They didn't like my solution, but there was nothing they could do about it now. Letting a property like that be lost to pure irresponsibility? I would never allow it. But I also never said I'd maintain that house for free forever. While they believed everything would go back to normal, that I'd keep being the fool who solved their financial problems. I already had other plans in mind. At first, no one noticed. Everything seemed the same. My parents sighed in relief. My siblings returned to their useless routines. But then, the notifications started to arrive. "What is this?" my mother asked, holding a letter in her hand. I took the envelope calmly and opened it with a smile. "Oh, it's the rental contract for the lake house. I closed the deal yesterday. Starting next month, it'll be occupied." The reaction in the room was immediate. "What?" my sister shouted, jumping to her feet. "I rented out the house," I repeated calmly. "And next month, the main house will also be rented." "You can't do this," my brother roared, stepping closer, as if to snatch the papers from my hands. I looked at him, unmoved. "Of course I can. Everything's in my name." The silence was deadly. "You promised you'd divide the inheritance in the future," my sister accused, her face red with fury. "And I will. But until then, these properties are mine. And I decide how they're used." "This isn't fair," my brother shouted. "These houses belong to the family." I laughed. "Oh, really? That's funny, because not long ago, you were thrilled to leave me out of everything. Now that I outsmarted you, you don't like it." My mother watched everything in silence, pale. My father lowered his head, as if trying to process what was happening. "I'm not keeping the inheritance," I continued. "But I've decided you don't deserve any of it. How can you do this to your own siblings?" My sister shrieked, hands trembling. I stepped closer to her, arms crossed. "How could you do this to me? How could you decide I didn't deserve anything? After all the work I put in?" They fell silent. "The houses will be rented. The rental income will cover the mortgage. The rest I'll invest. When the time comes, I'll decide how to divide everything. But don't expect me to fund this luxury lifestyle while you continue living like parasites." The explosion was immediate. "This is theft. You're a disgrace. You betrayed us. You snake." They shouted, furious, out of control. But I didn't flinch. For the first time I was free. And then I saw my parents' faces. There was no anger or indignation. Just sadness. My mother had her hands tightly clasped, her gaze empty. My father stared at the floor, as if he wished he could disappear. "Do you feel robbed?" I asked bluntly. My mother looked up, eyes full of tears. "You were our daughter. And I still am. Just not the daughter who pays for the whole family anymore. You deceived us. You taught me how to survive. I just learned to play the game better." My father took a deep breath and ran a hand over his face. "You could return the houses. And you could have been fair from the beginning. But you weren't, were you?" The silence was my answer. My mother lowered her head, her shoulders trembling. My father closed his eyes, defeated. They knew they wouldn't press charges. They didn't have the courage to take their own daughter to court. I had one. And this time, no one was going to take it from me. For a while, the house was filled with silence. My parents said nothing. My siblings were furious. And me? I just watched. Did they really think I would back down? That after everything they did? After leaving me out of the will? As if I didn't exist? I'd just forget? No. The mortgage was paid. The houses were rented. And the profits went straight to my account. My siblings tried to protest. They threatened. They yelled. But nothing changed. The contract was signed. They tried to convince my parents to act. But my parents remained silent. And that's when I realized. My parents weren't just sad. They were defeated. But not by me. They weren't sad about what they had done to me. Nor about having excluded me from the inheritance. They weren't devastated because, in the end, I had been smarter than them. And to them, that was unforgivable. You took everything, my mother murmured one day. After the first rental payment hit my account. I didn't take anything, I replied. I just made sure you didn't steal from me. She looked at me like she didn't recognize me. Like I was the villain in the story. But I didn't care anymore. My siblings didn't take long to leave the house. Without free housing. Without the luxuries they were used to. They soon realized that real life wasn't as easy as they had thought. It wasn't long before they each went their separate ways. Full of resentment and rage. And my parents? At first, they tried to keep their pride intact. But without my money. Without my siblings draining them. Reality began to weigh heavily. They started selling off what little they had left. To cover the bills. My father tried going back to work. But no one wanted to hire a man his age. At a decent salary. My mother tried reaching out to me a few times. But I didn't even listen. Because deep down, they deserved it. They weren't victims. They weren't naive, poor people. Who didn't know what they were doing. They made their decision consciously. When they excluded me from the inheritance. They believed they were doing the right thing. They thought I was strong enough. Not to need anything. Fine. If I was strong enough to make it on my own. Then they were strong enough to face the consequences of their own choices. Time passed. And their situation only got worse. They lost everything. The house they once tried to deny me was now mine. And them? They had nothing. Could I have helped them? Yes. Could I have shown compassion? Yes. But why? They had no compassion. When they decided I didn't deserve anything. Now I was the only one in the family. With stability. Money. And a secure future. And they had nothing. In the end. The world simply gave them back what they had earned. And me? I moved on with my life. Knowing that this time, no one would ever take advantage of me again. I felt no guilt. No remorse. And to be honest, no emotion at all for them. Because at the end of the day, I didn't do anything. Except play by the rules they themselves had set. I wasn't the one who decided to cut their own daughter out of the inheritance. I wasn't the one who gave everything to two people who had never done anything to deserve it. I simply did what they didn't have the intelligence to do. Make sure that the one who actually worked, who actually sacrificed, wouldn't be left empty-handed. I always heard that family is everything. That I had to be loyal. That I had to take care of my own. But what happens when your family doesn't take care of you? What happens when your family decides to erase you? To act like you don't deserve anything. Just because you were strong enough to move forward without their help? Exactly what happened to them. They were left with nothing. Because they never learned how to build anything on their own. I didn't abandon them. They were the ones who taught me not to rely on anyone. All I did was show them that I had learned the lesson better than they expected. From the very first month the houses were rented, my bank account grew like never before. Each month, the rental payments covered the mortgage, and the rest I invested wisely. In less than a year, I had enough money to expand. I bought more properties, diversified my income, and soon money was no longer a concern. Meanwhile, they sank deeper. My siblings jumped from one job to another, never lasting long at any of them, always complaining that the world was unfair, and that people with money are greedy. My mother tried to maintain her dignity, but over time, unpaid bills forced her to face the truth. And my father, he simply began to fade. I wasn't surprised the day they tried to talk to me again. My mother called first, her voice trembling, trying to sound strong, but with a pleading undertone. She didn't bother to hide. "Sweetheart, I know things didn't go the way we wanted, but maybe we could talk." "There's nothing to talk about," I replied bluntly. "But we're family." "Oh? Didn't seem like it. When you decided I didn't deserve anything." She sighed. "We didn't mean any harm. I don't care. I don't care why you did it, or how you justify it. All I know is, I don't owe you anything. Not when you were the ones who taught me to only look out for myself." She went silent. "We're not doing well." "Not my concern." I hung up. And it wasn't the only time. For months, my parents tried to reach out one way or another. First with subtle messages, trying to rebuild the relationship. Then with requests disguised as casual conversations. When nothing worked, came the pleas. To them, I had always been the strong daughter, the one who didn't need help. But now, as the world came crashing down on them, suddenly they wanted me to see them as victims. I wasn't a cruel person. I didn't enjoy watching them fall. But I was never going to be anyone's savior. I was fine. Actually, I was better than fine. My business grew. My life improved. I traveled, saw the world, did the things I had always wanted to do, without worrying about anyone but myself. And for the first time in my life, I didn't have to sacrifice for others. I wasn't tied to anyone. I didn't have to carry the weight of the mistakes of people who had never done anything for me. And that's how I realized the most important truth. Money isn't the problem. The problem is the people who expect others to fix their lives for them. My parents made bad decisions, and they paid the price. My siblings believed they could live off of others forever, and the world proved them wrong. I only did what had to be done. And because of that, I never again had to worry about anyone but myself.